what some analysts are saying is a win for the EU, a win for you against Google, Android. Do you see it as a win, or do you just see this in one step, one round of what is really going to be a lengthy battle?
Well, this is a win. A huge majority of the case is completely upheld, which means that the court has confirmed our view. And because of that, of course, we also feel the encouragement to continue enforcing when it comes to big tech. We have a number of investigations ongoing, 3 Apple cases, 1 Facebook case, and quite a big Google case also coming up.
Does the progress that you made with regards to the Google case, do you think that actually helps you with some of the other antitrust cases that you're bringing?
Well, we get the guidance from the court on our approaches. Of course, one of the major things for us is first to prove dominance. Mm-hmm. Because if you have that kind of market power, then our rules, they kick in. If you're just a small guy, you can do so many different things. If you're the big guy, if you have the market power, then, of course, we become much more strict.
But just to be clear, though, I mean, we know that Google is going to continue to fight this as long as they can. That's expected here. Even if you end up with a victory in the traditional sense here, does the prolonging of this fight maybe give those other companies a little bit more encouragement to fight back in their cases as well?
Well, I don't see it this way. Also because we have regulation coming in to complement what we do with the case-by-case enforcement. The Digital Markets Act was just signed yesterday, so will be entering into force mid-October. And of course, there is some time to adjust to new rules, but by early 24, those who are designated as gatekeepers, real tech market power, they will have to comply to quite a number of prohibitions, but also things that they must do. For instance, share data with some of their customers.
Some of already the threats of certain fines and the upholding has changed behavior to a certain degree. And I know that, of course, the EU has said welcomed as positive some of the changes, the proposed changes, indeed, that Google has made. It's interesting when you look at some of the reporting on the Google story from US print, Boston Globe, The Times, saying they call you, well, big tech's tormentor. And I'm interested as to whether you're finding that the US is becoming a tormentor too. When you're here talking with your counterparts from a competitive perspective, do the United States back you in terms of the moves you make on some of the big companies here?
Well, I have, the first time I came to the US as Commissioner for Competition with my Google case, people say, oh, what's she talking about? Crazy woman. That has changed completely. Both public opinion, the legislator in their approach, competition law enforcement, now cases are being brought, the state's also very active. And it's part of a global development. We see in South Korea, we see in Australia, we see, around the planet, people say, come on, we need an open marketplace, we need the drive for innovation, we need people to have choices. So that has changed enormously, and of course we follow very closely what happens in Congress, and we are working very closely with our colleagues here.
Talk to us then about sort of the key legal issues, legal questions that you're tackling. I know here within the US, it's not just about digital advertising or search or the way we think about third-party seller. I mean, there are a host of issues. For you, what is most important when you're thinking about the issues that you're trying to tackle within all of these lawsuits?
Well, as you say, they are basically, you find issues round the clock. You find self-preferencing, you find people imposing themselves, not making room for smaller businesses. We see the withholding and the use of data that smaller businesses cannot get hold of. And all these different illegal behaviors, they boil down to one thing, which is a closed, unfair marketplace that loses the drive for innovation.
I want to talk about some of the other initiatives that we've seen come out of Europe, including a group of European parliamentarians that have, I believe, sent you a letter to try to force Netflix and YouTube and some of these other tech companies contribute a little bit more to the build-out of internet infrastructure. Do you support that?
Well, I have no conclusions. It's a very interesting debate, and it's quite polarized. There are those who think best idea since Christmas, and others who say no, not in a million years. And what is interesting is to see how can we drive more investment in connectivity. because that's the important thing here. And I think it's an interesting discussion because in other parts of the world, you see commercial agreements between content providers and those who carry the content. In Europe, the landscape is a bit more diverse, so you have smaller players, maybe not the same bargaining power with those who provide content. So it's a debate that's ongoing, and we have no conclusions yet.
Let's talk about content for a minute and indeed protecting data, protecting content. I know that you're looking at cyber resilience in particular at the moment. It feels like every now and then it rears its ugly head. We all become very consumed in cyber and then we get plagued with the rest of the world's issues. How are you looking to a world with the Internet of Things, with the world of Web 3.0, whatever way? Are we moving quickly enough to ensure that our data can be preserved?
Well, one can discuss the speed, but we definitely need to do more. We just tabled a proposal to make sure that every gadget is cybersecurity proof. So your voice assistant, every connected object, your lawn mover, that they're all cybersecurity proofed. Because otherwise, you create more and more vulnerabilities. Because for everything that is connected to that internet, well, the more vulnerable we become, if not every gadget is also cybersecurity proofed. And it seems as if it's a burden on businesses, but the cost of not taking care of cybersecurity is enormous. So for more and more sectors, it's important. Now we see the digitization of agriculture. Mm-hmm. Also here, of course, you need to make sure that you protect yourself from data being stolen and also from you being hacked.
Let's talk about other vulnerabilities and other costs, and that is, of course, Russia's war on Ukraine. I'm curious, how much sacrifice is are Europeans willing to take to handle when it comes to the energy crisis, the food crisis, to stop Russia?
Well, first and foremost, the sanctions are working. Mm-hmm. We see very, very clear effects on the Russian economy. And I think that is really important. And the latest steps, of course, to disconnect the financing of the war, that is what is important. That is what to be achieved with the sanctions. And I think Europeans are willing to do quite a lot. You saw the hospitality of refugees coming out of Ukraine. And you now see how people, they are looking at their politicians, of course, to find help, to pay dramatically increasing energy bills, to see how can we deal with the fact that Putin has weaponized the gas delivery, while there is quite a lot of energy production coming from renewables, which is actually low cost. So internally, we are finding our ways to make sure that low cost also find its way to the consumer, while at the same time upholding the sanctions against Russia.
With regards to the support for the energy industry, there are some of the energy-intensive firms, whether it's direct financial support or support by other means. Is there some concern here about, A, the consolidation of power, whether it's figuratively or literally, among some of these nations, and also the idea that some of these countries and some of these companies are looking outside the EU to, I guess, less climate-friendly countries to source their energy needs?
Well, it's a complex situation. What we want to achieve is that we still have a level playing field. There will be businesses in all countries who will need support in order to make ends meet and continue producing, and also a certain level of coordination, so that you don't have businesses closing down, key points in one supply chain, so that is being stopped, and others are closing down other key points in other supply chains.
Are you willing to allow consolidation, assuming that it is done in the vein of trying to sort of deal with the energy crisis?
Well, we don't see that consolidation by anyone is seen as a remedy here. On the contrary, what is needed is to look at the energy market to see how can that provide even in times of war. Because obviously the energy market design is for normal time, peacetime. And when you have the weaponization of, in particular, gas with these increasing prices, it becomes very difficult. So first things first, we now have secured gas for the winter, so very high storage. Now we're looking intensively at prices, how to make sure that they stabilize, that the volatility comes out of this market, and of course that member states are able to support the poorer households and businesses who really suffer from this.
I mean, we have seen that sort of support. Romania, I know that you've signed off on, I think it was 4 billion euros to be able to support some of the energy-intensive companies there. When we look at Germany, a historic potentially takeover of gas companies, 3 of them. What of an upending of private markets is this likely to be? Are we going to return to more of a public sector ownership in this respect?
I think that's very difficult to say right now because for quite a long time we are expecting prices to be high. And at the same time, we're in the first major transition where it's politically guided. Every country on this planet signed up for the Paris Agreement. Every member state in the European Union now pushing for the green transition and accelerating that because of the energy crisis. So the state has taken a new role also because of that to somehow emboldened by COVID, because also here you had a lot of state responsibility. And now with the energy crisis, of course, the state needs to do more. And what is important for us is, of course, that no one forgets that you will never, ever fight climate change without the private sector. If you do not get the business community on board, you're dead in the water. So what we are trying to balance is to make sure that new state initiative doesn't crowd out private investments and that we still get in the energy market a strong investment signal. That you should invest in renewables, you should come into the market, because without that, we just prolong the crisis.
I'm curious, and I mean this respectfully, if any of your constituents give pushback on the way we're having to think and then backtrack on nuclear, given Russia's invasion of Ukraine and being caught off guard. Some would say we maybe saw this coming with the annexation of Russia, and we were still not prepared and caught off guard. We continued to close nuclear. Is that an option? Is that green? Is that something that you bring back on the table to help with that reliable transition?
Well, it is for every member state to decide. Our rules, they give freedom to every member state to decide their energy mix. Some are in nuclear, taking a lot of gas. Some are a lot in renewables, wind, solar, water power. So it's not up for us to decide. And now, of course, I think a lot of member states, they reconsider. Should they postpone the phasing out of nuclear if they were on that track? Because other member states, they say, we will definitely continue in nuclear. And of course, we'll also continue investing in innovation so that you get smaller nuclear, you get the safe kind of nuclear where you can better deal with the waste issues. So you get different pushes. And I think the diversity of the energy market is what will keep it healthy for the foreseeable future once we transition into being more climate-wise.
All right, we're almost out of time here. You've been in this job in various capacities as competition commissioner for, 9 years now. Have any ambitions to do anything other than this?
Well, leaving your first love is a difficult thing to do, Remains to be seen. The interesting thing with competition law enforcement is that, of course, there is a political mandate, but you need to enforce to the very last day. And it needs to continue on the very first day of the new mandate. So, I keep focused.